everybody, welcome back. My name is Meg Treseder. I am the Adult Services Librarian here at the beautiful Azle Memorial Library. I read a ton of books this month, so you are going to hear about all of them. The good, the bad, and the ugly, they're all here. I have, I think, 8 books to share with you. So 6 of them are new fiction, 1 is a new memoir, and then 1 is an oldie but a goodie. I'm bringing back one, I think it was from 2007, and I loved it, so I have to talk about it with you. So, I also want to do a rating system, and I'm going to kind of copy Goodreads. They do a star system from, I don't think it's possible to get 0 stars, but just in case, 0 to 5. 5 being it's a new favorite and I'll reread it, and 0, the book has no merit, why was it ever published? So, my first one is A Spool of Glue Thread by Ann Tyler. And this is an advanced reader copy. We got this a few months back, and I had never read her before. I hear, though, this is her last novel that she's going to write, so I know a lot of fans out there are disappointed. Maybe she'll change her mind, I don't know. I really enjoyed it. This was probably a 3.5 to a 4. She's a great writer. She writes a good story. It's about a woman named Abby Whitshank, and she is the matriarch of this family. And her and her husband, she and her husband live in this house, and their kids have flown the nest. They're gone. And it tells the story of their life currently, but then it also tells the rather heartwarming story of their courtship and how they fell in love. And then it tells the story of his parents, so her husband's parents, and how they came to build this house in which they now reside. And it's just this epic story of a family and multiple generations and the choices they make and how those choices affect other family members and how they can be heartbreaking sometimes. And I liked it because there's this major plot twist in the middle that you just I didn't see coming anyway, and I always appreciate that when an author kind of change things up. And then it doesn't have this neatly tied in a bow finish, and I love that too. So this is one I highly recommend. It was one I really enjoyed. The second, Vanessa and Her Sister by Priya Parmore. I hated it. It would have gotten a 2, but writing is lovely cannot get a 2. I had to give it a 3 instead. I started it in the Barnes & Noble. I was waiting for a friend, and I read about the first 50 pages and went home just so excited to finish it. I knew I'd ordered a copy for the library. It would be coming soon. And I got it. The first half of the book I loved, and then it just kind of tanked. It's about a woman named Vanessa, and she is the sister of Virginia Woolf, who we all know, a very famous and tragic figure in the literary world. And at some point in their lives, it's the 2 of them living together with their 2 brothers. And this is in England. And they run with this very artistic literary set. E.M. Forster's in the group, and it's called the Bloomsbury Group. And again, they're all just brilliant and very talented and very artistic. And Vanessa's a painter. And about halfway through the book, she decides to marry one of their friends. And this kind of unhinges an already very unstable Virginia. And Virginia's very jealous and possessive of her sister, like no one else can have her. And this leads her to do some pretty reprehensible things, and I felt like you thought you knew a character and they did a 180 and they were someone completely different. And by the end, I liked no one and didn't care about anybody. I thought things kind of just stagnated and it just became something I had to get through. The writing, though, the writing is lovely. It's very insightful. It's very quotable. So that, to me, redeemed the book. I think if you like books about famous authors or artists and you like good writing, I think you should still give it a shot. I just didn't like any of the characters, and that makes it hard for me to truly like a book. So, the next one, The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. This one I also wanted to love. It's gotten so much buzz. It's already, of course, being made into a film, of course. I gave this one a 2. It's supposed to be the new Gone Girl, and it kind of Gone Girl meets Rear Window, which I also loved. The premise is fascinating. It's a woman, she's an alcoholic, and she is commuting back and forth from work every day, morning and night. And so she takes the same train. And during her commute, she often sees this couple spending time on their terrace. And they're, this very attractive, loving couple. And then one day, she sees the woman kissing a man that's not her husband. And then the next day, she's gone. She's reported missing, and this woman hears about it in the news. And of course, you know, suspects foul play. So she kind of does this amateur sleuthing and, you know, just trying to kind of, you know, solve the puzzle. And you have an unreliable narrator like you do with Gone Girl, because she is an alcoholic and she just binge drinks for like an entire day and then has major blackouts, wakes up the next day and can't remember a thing that happened the day before. And you're clueless, of course, as the reader, you know, along with her. I didn't like it because the writing isn't great. It's very disjointed, terrible character development. There is some good suspenseful aspects of it, but the bad thing is that I actually guessed the ending, and I hate when that happens, because then to me it's just boring. Why am I reading it? So I didn't love it. I wanted to, but I didn't. The next one is called The Same Sky by Amanda Airward, and we also got an advanced reader copy of this one. I loved the story in this one. This one's probably about a 3.5 or 4. It's got 2 stories contained in it. It's about a woman named Alice and her husband, and they live in Austin, Texas. And they run this very popular, famous barbecue joint. And they're desperately, desperately trying to adopt a child, but it keeps not working out for them. So you have that story. And then concurrently you have a girl named Carla, and she's in Honduras living with her grandmother and brother. And her mother earlier has illegally made the journey from Honduras to Texas to make some money to send, which she sends back to the family, of course, to help them out. Her grandmother dies, though, and her brother comes home smelling of glue. And I guess that's something that's very prevalent there, is that they sniff glue, and that kind of helps with the hunger and also, of course, takes their pain away. But she said no one's ever come back from that addiction. Once you become addicted to glue, there is no saving you. So it really scares her, and so she decides, we're going to do it. We're going to make the trek to America to find her mother. And so during part of that journey, what they typically will do is they'll take this train, which is called, it's known as the Beast. And rather unspeakable things happen on this train. People are regularly raped, thrown off of it, robbed. I mean, it's just generally lawless. And so you have her story, and it's a very compelling one. Whatever your politics might be about this topic, Carla is a character who has immense courage and faith and, you know, this driving need to change her life. And I loved that. The writing I don't think was quite as sophisticated, so I didn't love that. And Alice's story, to me, Alice wasn't a character that I sympathized with. She often did kind of incomprehensible things that kind of threw me for a loop. I didn't love that. So, but the story really got me just wanting to keep reading and picking up that book so I could finish it. So I did overall really enjoy it. The next one is Black River by S.M. Hulse. I loved it, finally. I gave it 4.5 stars. It was just such a great, great book. It's set in Montana, and it's really this lovely, spare, kind of bleak. I think kind of what I imagine Montana to be, lovely but kind of bleak at the same time. It's just this beautiful story. So it's about a man named Wes Carver and his wife, who is just beloved by him, just absolutely, he's just in love with her. She's just passed away from cancer. And he gets this letter from a parole board. They're going to be having a parole hearing. And he used to be a guard in a prison in Montana, a prison guard. And he had been involved in a prison riot where one of the prisoners held him hostage for many, many hours and tortured him. And the problem with it was that Wes Carver, he was a very talented fiddle player. And during the hostage situation, the prisoner, systematically broke every single one of his fingers. So he was never able to play the fiddle again. So he took away that talent, that one joy that he had besides his family. Gave him any kind of hope. And so, Wes kind of has to decide, can someone who is that inhuman, because the man has said that he's, found God, he's reformed, he's a changed person, and, he should be eligible for parole. And so, Wes thinks, is it possible to change once you've done something like that to another human being? Can you change? And can I forgive that? So I think it asks some pretty deep questions that I think as a reader is kind of fun to wrestle with and think if I were in that place, what would I do? But the writing is lovely. The whole thing, I just loved. She, and it's a she. I thought it was a man actually because it's just SM, but I looked it up, and she's a woman, and she's able to go inside the head of a man, the mind of a man, and how he might think. And so she's just a great writer, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. The last fiction, the new fiction that I have for you is called Saving Grace, and it's by Jane Green. And this one I was really torn about as well. It's probably a 3. I didn't love it, but I enjoyed it. I think it's still worth reading. It's about a woman named Grace Chapman, and she's married to this writer, and he's a bit of an egomaniac. His name is Ted Chapman, and he's also a major, just a rageaholic. I mean, he's very abusive to her, verbally and I think emotionally. And so she's able to deal with that, though. She still has a good life, and she has the assistant she kind of works for both of them. This woman is the assistant, and she's good at managing Ted when he gets into his moods. But she has to leave them. She has some family issues. So they get this new assistant named Beth, and she's this younger woman, and she's just kind of a dream come true, right? She comes in, and she's this master of efficiency and organization, and she kind of just fixes everything. But Grace, there's something a little bit off about Beth, and Grace can't quite put her finger on it, but she knows. And you see Beth kind of just systematically push Grace out of her life, and Beth just takes over, and it's just kind of fascinating how it happens. And Grace has to decide, how am I going to get my life back, and is it even worth it to get back? Because of course it wasn't perfect with her husband. My 2 main contentions, the reason I couldn't give this a better score, the writing is great, the story is engrossing, you want to keep reading. I didn't like that there weren't enough instances where Beth was doing things to harm Grace. It wasn't clear enough. Grace alludes to things, but I think in order to build tension, you would have needed more events or concrete things that she could point to that saying, Beth is doing things, right? They're underhanded. The other thing is, Beth, of course, I mean, she's a psychopath probably, right? And so she kind of takes center stage, which makes sense. But it's the husband. I mean, they never address the abuse that he subjects everyone around him, and particularly his wife, to every day. And it's kind of like the women in the novel just kind of conspire together to pat his head like he's some naughty kid. And I didn't buy it. I didn't like that. I thought she missed a really good chance to talk about that kind of abuse. That may not be physical, but it's still abuse. And so for that reason, I just couldn't love the book, but I still thought it was an entertaining read. The memoir that I have for you is called, It Was Me All Along by Andy Mitchell. It is such a great story. I loved it, just unabashedly loved it. Probably a 4, 4.5. And I really think if you've ever struggled with any kind of addiction, any kind of problem with self-image, particularly of course weight, then you should read this book. I think it's almost universal. So she is a girl growing up in this home. Her mother is just an absolute rock. She's a saint. But her father, he's handsome and charming and just great, but when he drinks, it's another story, right? He throws things and he says very cruel things to the family. But he also eats. He spends a lot of his nights just eating. And she sees this example that he sets. And her mother, this is funny, I can relate to this. When you love someone, when she loves someone, she wants to feed them, right? And this is what her mother does. And she just makes these gourmet meals, and she's just shoving food at people, right? And so she has these 2 kind of bad examples of, with eating and what food does for our bodies and what it means to us. And so she grows up just with the worst eating habits. She tells, there's a scene that's, it's sad because you can tell how ashamed she is of it, but she eats her entire birthday cake. She bakes it and then eats every single last bite, every single last crumb. And just the shame and just the regret that she feels immediately, even as she's doing it, but she just can't stop. So she gets to be in her 20s. You know, she's she's always been big and she's always been teased for it. But she's in her 20s, she's in college, she has great friends, you know, she still has this great life, but she's very unhappy with how she looks, of course. But she gets to the gym with a friend one day and she gets on the scale. And she's okay, you know, I'll probably top 200, you know. And she's closer to 300 than she is 200. And she just has this wake-up call. And she's like, I can't do this anymore. So she takes the next year of her life and loses the weight. She loses, I think, about 130 pounds probably. And gets down to a size where she feels very comfortable, and she does it through exercise and eating right. The weight comes off, but there are still, she finds, she's very surprised to learn this, that life isn't perfect even then. And she still has some issues that she needs to get through. And my favorite moment came at the very end where she talks about the title of the book, It Was Me All Along. And she uses that in the text of her book, and you see what she means by it. And it's this really lovely, kind of heartwarming moment that I think we probably all can identify with. If you're interested in it, and if you're not quite sure you want to read the book, she also does a TED Talk, which I highly recommend watching. I really enjoyed it. The last one is called Still Alice by Lisa Genova. And this is the oldie but goodie. It was, I think, published a few years ago, but it's come out, it's been made into a movie that's just come out this month with Julianne Moore. And I loved the book, a 4.5. I loved it. It was truly an amazing book. So it's about a woman, she's a Harvard professor, and you know, just at the top of her profession. People respect her, she's brilliant, she's so good at what she does, and her mind is just so quick. And she starts forgetting things though, and she starts kind of misplacing things, and she thinks, okay, it's just menopause, I'm at right about that right age, you know, where it might just be menopause. But then she starts forgetting, you know, more major things that are a little bit more troubling to her. And so she goes to the doctor, and she finally figures out that she has early onset Alzheimer's. And there is no other word but tragic to describe the cost of Alzheimer's. This book is brilliant because it takes you through that evolution. It takes you from where she was to what she becomes and everything that she loses along the way. And it's just heartbreaking. I mean, things I had never thought of. Not being able to watch a movie because you can't follow the thread of the plot from the first second to the end. She can't finish books, she can't write emails anymore. One of the, I think, most heartbreaking scenes, she's in her summer home. They left for the summer to go find some kind of rest and relaxation for her. And she's in the middle of the hall, and she knows she has to use the restroom, but she cannot find it. She doesn't remember where the restroom is anymore, and she doesn't get to it in time. And it's just heartbreaking. But the interesting thing is there's still hope, because she realizes how much some of her family is there for her at the end. And I think once extraneous things are stripped away, I think she kind of shifts her priorities and heals some rifts that she'd had with people. And that I loved. This book is just rife with great things to discuss. I finished it in the morning, and this is embarrassing, but I was driving somewhere, and I found myself talking aloud about the book, and I was thinking, that's crazy. I need to force other people to read it. So I'm forcing my book club to read it in April, so we'll have someone to talk about it with who's actually human and alive and there next to me talking about it. So I'm looking forward to that, but it's such a great book. I think, especially if you have somebody in your life with Alzheimer's, I think you'll be able to identify with it so much and really understand what the author's talking about. So I loved it. I highly recommend it. Those are my books this month. I hope that you can enjoy some of them as much as I have. Thank you.